Good afternoon, everyone. This is Megha Patel, team member of Kaash Foundation. We at Kaash Foundation are delighted to welcome you all to again the third day of Faculty Development Program organized by Kaash Foundation Center for Academic and Professional Development in collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada and St. Xavier Institute of Education, Mumbai. The first day of the International Faculty Development Program began with an endorsement by our collaborator, Professor Anne Vallely from the University of Ottawa, Canada. As she was unable to grace the session with her presence, the endorsement was shared by Dr. Kamini Gogri. Then it was followed by the inaugural address by Father Blaise D'Souza, the managing trustee of St. Xavier Institute of Education, after which Dr. Afkash Jadhav, founder trustee of Kash Foundation and the director of CAPD, spoke a few words on the foundation and also shared the concept note of the FTP with us. We also had Dr. Sosama Samuel, the principal of St. Xavier Institute of Education, shared her welcome address with us, after which Dr. Geeta Ajit, the associate director and coordinator of CAPD, elaborately explained the concept note and objectives of CAPD. Finally, the guidelines and the vision and objectives of CAPD. Finally, the guidelines and the grading system of the FDP were explained by Professor Elvina Pereira, Assistant Professor of St. Xavier Institute of Education. Proceeding with the keynote session, our moderator for the day, Professor Elvina Pereira, introduced Dr. James Only, the keynote speaker for the Faculty Development Program. Dr. Only deliberated speak using digital archives in the classroom, the case of the Qatar library. Yesterday, the second day of FTP, we had Dr. Rashmi Jeta, who moderated and introduced a two-scholar, Dr. Smita Sehgal, the Associate Professor of Department of History from Lady Shri Ram, spoke on teaching history empowering young minds. Our second speaker for the second F day of FTP was Dr. Mandal, Associate Professor of Department of Education and Social Sciences of National Council of Educational Research and Training, who spoke on teaching history with a balanced approach. Now we commence with the third day of the International Faculty Development Program with two scholars in the fields of education and teaching, Jin Li and Mr. Radha Trivedi. I would like to invite now our founder trustee program coordinator, Dr. Afkash Jadhav, to give up some guidelines.
Thank you, Megha. Good afternoon, everyone. I have few things to share with you because we've been getting constant messages and email from your end. And some of these emails are really encouraging and the messages are quite encouraging as such. There are a few things which we just wanted to share with you. First and foremost, the feedback which is being expected from your end will help us to grade you, as discussed by Professor Elvina on the day one in the inaugural, is basically will be taken into account for grading you. That's one aspect. Second, kindly log in with your name, because we do find difficulty when we are trying to tab or we are trying to look at our registered participants names, and sometimes your names do not appear on the screen in the similar manner. It is sometimes a gadget's name, or it is some name which we cannot tally, so it will be difficult for us to keep a tab of your attendance as well. So if you have not renamed yourself, kindly do that as such. And thank you for the wonderful feedback you've been giving us on some sessions. Some feedback was so fabulous that we really felt that what endeavor which we have taken up on improvising or looking at teaching history in a different manner is serving its purpose. However, some participants, I would like to mention one participant, in order to just fill the feedback, had just pressed continuously comma, and the person is a faculty in an institute. So we wanted to write back to the faculty that this kind of feedback is not accepted, but I am leaving that forum open to that particular participant. So kindly do not engage in this kind of a process, which is not appropriate, because we all are from academics, the teachers and the would-be teachers as such. So do write your genuine feedback. We are quite fortunate enough to get scholars from across the stream and from other parts of the country as well, other parts of the world as well. So I think those who are doing the feedback in a serious manner, kindly do. So we really enjoy reading your feedback, and that keeps us motivated and we feel that we are on the right track. What we're doing is well. And those who have not been able to scale up to that kind of a standard, I'm sure if you put in right kind of effort, you will be able to also generate the feedback. Why we require the feedback? Of course, apart from grading, we are also going to create a proceeding of the entire FDP. The proceeding basically is, it will constitute the sessions what we had, the speakers summary, the pointers which they had shared along the 7 days program. That is one part. And second, we will also incorporate your feedback in the proceeding. So now, and all the feedback will go online. It will go on Kaash Foundation's CAPD website. So the feedback you write, okay, will be available online for anyone to have access to. And we'll be writing the details, which institute you belong to, which faculty you are from. So I'm leaving it open to you. The feedback which you write will be in public domain. So the representation from your side has to be appropriate and has to be as per the standard as such. Now I'm checking, somebody has just entered into Galaxy J2. Now we do not know if the participant has registered. We do not have the name of the participant. So if you have not changed your name, there is option. When you go to your name, you have option of more and you get a tab, rename yourself. So if you have not done it, it's very simple process. You can still do it. Thank you once again to all of you for being here with us and for writing, the way I said, wonderful feedbacks from some of you. We really enjoy reading them. So keep enjoying this entire process of learning and sharing as such. Thank you. Over to you, Megha.
Now, I would like to invite Ms. Kavita Pandey, our moderator for the day. She is an placement officer, Faculty of Management, Alkesh Dinesh Modi Institute, committee member of Kaash Foundation, and editorial member of IJCCD.
Thank you, Megha, for your invitation. Okay, I would like to start my day with this beautiful quote of Mr. Betty Reardon, who defines peace education as an attempt to promote the development of an authentic planetary consciousness that will enable us to function as global citizens and to transform the present human conditions by changing the social structures and patterns of thought that have created it. Thus, peace education inculcates the higher order human values among the individuals. Peace education through history has an objective to overall development of the individuals and helps to enhance eternal values in their minds. With this note, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Jin Li. He is the fourth speaker in 7 days second International Faculty Development Program for History Teachers, jointly organized by Kaash Foundation, CAPD, Center for Academic and Professional Development, in collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai. A brief introduction about Mr. Jin Li is as follows. Mr. Jin Li is a peace educator in the area of heavenly culture, world peace, restoration of lights in Gyeongju, Gyeongbuk branch, Korea. Sir is involved in peace teacher training plan and lecture. Mr. Lee has Masters of Mechanical Engineering from Gyeongbuk National University, South Korea. His delivery topic of a day is how to teach peace through history. With immense pleasure, I invite you, Mr. Jin Lee, to start your session. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Hello, my name is Jin Li, and thank you for very interesting. And today, I'd like to begin by expressing my thanks to Dr. Abkash Shahab for inviting me. And giving me an opportunity to speak about teaching history. This opportunity gives me the chance to think about teaching history more deeply. I am from South Korea and work as an HWPL peace educator for the Daegu and Gyeongbuk branch of Heavenly Culture, World Peace, Restoration of Life, an international peace organization. Today, I'm going to talk about how to teach peace through history, based on the experience I have gained since working as an HWPL peace educator. I'd like to divide today's keyword history education into two parts, history and education. Let's look at education first. By looking at the definition of education and thinking deeply about it, I concluded that education is a tool to bring something from learners, make them grow discernment, and develop them. Given this, I suggested that the purpose of education is change. Have you ever baked bread? When we bake bread without yeast, the dough will not be changed into bread. When it comes to people, education works just like yeast. This means we can be changed through education. I believe any subject under the category of education should be able to change learners. Absolutely, the change should lead to improvement of learners. Now, let's talk about history. History means the record of events that took place in the past or figures that lived in the past. Why should we learn about the past events or figures? I would like to bring up one of the best-selling books titled The Use of History by a well-known history instructor. The house. Could we get the authority to Janice Kim?
Yes,
Because
done. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I will start. And that book, the author answered. The author answered that the title. So I will start now. I'm sorry. So when we see history, history means the record of events that take place in the past and figures that lived in the past. And why should we learn about the past events or figures? I'd like to bring up one of the best-selling books titled The Use of History by a well-known history instructor, answer this question. I'm sorry. I would like to bring up one of the best-selling books titled The Use of History by a well-known history instructor to answer this question. The author answered this question in one sentence. Whenever I have felt lost, I found the answer through the history. When we solve problem in a workbook, an inspiration book helps us to solve the problem. Likewise, history can help us find an answer in life because history records the past figures' choices and their results. How good it is if students also feel the same thing as an author, so that they can address the problem they will inevitably face in life by using history as an advisor. I believe that teaching history does not mean simply teaching what happened in the past, but teaching how history can lead students to live a better life. Moreover, we should teach students how to apply history in their present lives and how to handle their issues through history. However, if someone asks me whether students in Korea are taught history in the same way just mentioned, honestly, it is hard to say yes. I will briefly introduce how Korean students are taught history. The elementary students are taught history through the subject social studies. Middle school students study Korean history and world history. There is a university entrance exam in Korea, so high school students spend countless hours preparing for this exam, in which they diligently study Korean history because it is a requirement. For this exam, history becomes a mere subject to memorize. I also study history this way. Did I like history or not? We can ponder upon that as we continue. I have no doubt you have heard the saying, history is a mirror, which means that through the event of the past, we can find teachings reflect on ourselves in the present and the expectations for our future. But I question whether history can be a mirror to Korean students who just simply memorize historic events. It is not an exaggeration to say that this method of education does not let history perform its role, but rather leads students to consider history as nothing more than a collection of paper or an annoyance. I cannot help them use it as a mirror to reflect upon themselves. I believe you have figured out the answer to my question. I hated studying history because it was really a burden for me. I continued to memorize, take tests, and forget it. Luckily, while working as an HWPI educator, I began to recognize the necessity of history education and how helpful history can be for my life. Now I like history. Undoubtedly, history is an interesting subject, but unfortunately, Korean students have yet to discover this. The perception that history is just a past event and has nothing to do with our lives prevails among our society. However, I'm sure that history can draw more students' attention when teachers like you teach history's true role to help students reflect upon themselves and guide their lives. Have you heard anyone say that when the history of mankind is condensed and put in a line, war has always been taking place, except for a very short period of time? The history of the world is a history of war. When I first heard this, I was pretty shocked. But when I thought about it, soon after opening a book to study Korean history, I was reading about war, with things like the war between tribes or the use of iron tools. And the story of wars continues endlessly after that. In fact, what I learned and memorized in history class was in which year the war took place, the general who won the war, and who they defeated, and the tactics and weapons they used. Yes, I definitely studied wars in history class, and I studied a lot. However, those words just existed in words and sentences, and I didn't understand what they meant. I had an experience which told me what war means. What words comes to your mind when you think of Korea? Korea is one of the only still divided countries in the world. South and North have been locked in a ceasefire, which, which technically means that the war hasn't come to an end. Therefore, Korean men have an obligation to serve in the military. So I underwent military training. I touched air guns and learned how to shoot them. I took part in the training diligently and thought it was a matter of pride to be handy with guns. I believe that good marksmanship skills were necessary to survive in a war. I haven't yet used the skills that I learned then, but it's actually a big relief that I haven't had to. Anyway, only after touching and shooting real guns did I come to understand what a war actually means. Those words that I had seen just as words before. There is no concession in war. Instead, there is a death, misery, and destruction. I realized that a real world doesn't stay confined in walls and isn't a game that I played with my friend in the playground. However, I was discharged from the military service and my sense of war gradually became dull. One day, I discovered the organization called HWPL. Simply put, HWPL is an NGO which works to cease war in the world, achieve world peace, and leave peace as a legacy for future generations. At first, I thought their peace event might be just one-off, but it was not. It was different. What stands out most among the differences is that Chairman Lee himself is a veteran of the Korean War, therefore he knows well what a war means. He saw the numerous deaths of his comrades and experienced the sorrow, hurting, and cruelty of war. It is because of this that he not only urged for the necessity for peace with wars, but instead he has devoted himself in practice to make peace happen and leave to future generations peace rather than war. In fact, he has traveled around the world 31 times with the aim of achieving peace. What he says changed people's way of thinking, and it has awakened many people, myself included. For me, personally, the Mindanao Peace Agreement was the most impressive event. The Philippines have suffered disputes for about 40 years, and no local politicians or laws could settle them. When both representatives of the disputes and the residents gathered, Chairman Li asked a question. Do you want war or peace? All those present said they wanted peace. The two representatives had no choice but to sign the peace agreement. They realized that everyone wanted peace, and the peace agreement had to be signed to achieve it. Everyone wants peace. However, it seems difficult to achieve peace in one's own life and community, let alone on a global scale. The way to achieve peace seems unclear and distant. Can we be peaceful without learning peace? I believe peace is something that we have to learn to achieve. As I mentioned during my introduction, I am currently working as a peer peace educator. From now on, I'm going to speak about how peace education is used to educate on peace using history. First, we need to explain about HWPR peace education in general. What comes to mind when you hear the word peace education? There may be those who are used to it, but most of you are not familiar with this phrase. We've been teaching languages, mathematics, social studies, science, and music, but I think that when it comes to peace, we haven't learned or are less experienced in the teaching. Peace education became popularized by the Norwegian sociologist Johan Galtung during the 1950s. At that time, the concept of peace was only focused on direct violence. But Johan Galtung widely defined the concept of peace as a negative peace as well as positive peace. Negative peace is the state of being without order and collective violence. Positive peace goes beyond the state of being without order and collective violence, and we can say that it is the state in which cooperation, integration, harmony, recovery, and justice are achieved. Johan Galtung revealed the reason why he made the concept of negative and positive peace. He had been inspired by public health ideas. According to public health ideas, health is the absence of sickness and also the state of having the ability that our body's immune responses can activate. Like this, we need to have the ability to not only heal the negatives, but also to positively prevent violence for peace. It's like the old idea of putting a fence at the top of the cliff rather than an ambulance at the bottom. Let's think of people around us. There might be someone who makes people around us uncomfortable and create trouble everywhere they go. However, someone else might make all types of people become one and have people in trouble. What's the difference between these two? Do they value peace and have an understanding of it? This is the answer. Peace values means that someone values peace. An understanding of peace is not a simple matter of character, but is a nurtured and social ability that is able to figure out the source of conflict in our lives and solve the problem peacefully. Those who have an understanding of peace have the mind free of violence, pain, and discrimination. They can easily communicate and empathize with others on the other side of the fence. The power to resolve conflict and make peace itself must come from an understanding of peace. So we can see the purpose of HWPL peace education is to train a peace citizen who values peace and has an understanding of it. The peace citizen is the one who can create peace by solving the personal and social problems in the community in peaceful ways. The more peace citizens there are, then the more peaceful world will be. It can be improved through education. Then, how can we educate people to make peace citizens? The peace education is composed of 12 lessons. The contents of the 12 lessons are as follows. Please refer to the screen. They are largely divided into two parts. The first part is the process of finding out how to achieve peace from nature, which is heavenly culture. The second part is applying and exploring the specific ways to be able to become a peace citizen. And I'm going to take a break for 5 minutes so that you can focus more. In the meantime, please refer to 12 lessons on the screen. 과장님 지금 시작하라는데 지금 할까요 그냥?
네, 하세요.
예, 알겠습니다. Now I start now the seminar. You guys read the screen. Did you read? And now the biggest difference from our other peace education is that this seeks answer to peace from nature and let us know how to achieve peace on an individual and community level. In nature, all the various entities coexist and harmonize, which is peace. What is the secret? Let's think about it while you watch the part of the documentary One Strange Rock, which made by National Geographic. Please understand that this video was made in South Korea and has Korean subtitles.
The strangest place in the whole universe might just be right here.
Dust storms can be pretty amazing when you see them from space. And sometimes they're huge.
I saw that dust storm that was over Africa, now over the Atlantic Ocean. In my next orbit, I see it hitting the coast of South America.
Every year, about 27 million tons of that African dust we can see from orbit drops out of the sky into the Amazon basin. And it turns out it's the perfect fertilizer. And as they grow, the plants and the trees turn carbon dioxide into oxygen.
There's a river in the Amazon. No, not that one. There's another river. A river in the sky. If you could look inside the trees, you'd see water sucked up from the forest floor. When the water hits the top, the combination of sun and wind turns it into a mighty river, a flying river.
The clouds condense into raindrops, which then race down the slopes and flow directly back into the Amazon basin. eroding the rock and turning it into sediment, until all those nutrients are dumped into the ocean and a whole other world. And waiting for those sediments is an extraordinary organism, 4 times thinner than a human hair. It's called a diatom. Diatoms are the secret to the Earth's oxygen supply, each one starting to produce oxygen. Amazingly enough, what you're looking at is microscopic life. Diatom blooms that reflect the light differently so that they show up from space.
But you know what? Diatoms are important not just because of what they do when they're alive, but also what they do once they're dead.
Their carcasses slowly fall to the ocean floor, where they carpet it in a layer half a mile thick. We call it marine snow, and that's exactly what it looks like. Snowflakes. But unlike snowflakes, they never melt. And over millions of years, the seabeds rise, the ocean levels fall, and the ocean floor becomes a salty desert. The desert that blows all the way to the Amazon, that was once a seabed. And the dust that makes the rainforest grow, diatom shells. It just goes to show how incredibly interlinked everything is.
The whole planet works as one to create that thin blue line. The mark of a living world we've seen nowhere else in the universe. We're not just rare. We're not just special. We are unique. And that's what makes this one strange rock.
As you saw from the video, we are part of nature, seem to be amazed by the wonders of nature. In the world of space, the only living creatures exist on Earth. Could you see a reason why living creatures can live harmoniously together on the Earth? It is because everything on Earth and in space faithfully fulfills their roles in harmony. The ozone layer has its role of blocking out UV rays. Microorganisms dissolve organic matter, and chlorophyll creates nutrients through photosynthesis. Therefore, everything in creation has its own unique value. In nature, even dust has its own value of existence. Then, what value do I have? What roles should I play in society? If all creation makes peace within the order of nature, what is social order and how can we make it? HWPL Peace Education explores these questions. It's not just about teaching that we need to achieve world peace, but we teach the way to keep social order and to understand our own values and roles. Furthermore, we deal with the necessary values of thankfulness, consideration, sacrifice, forgiveness, and love in order to achieve peace. This is the HWPL Peace Education. HWPL's Peace Education seeks the solution to peace not only from nature but also from history. Let me explain. There are two aspects of peace education through history. First, students learn the necessity of peace, the causes of war, and the way to achieve peace as they explore historical events. Now, let us take a look at the case of peace education conducted in South Korea last year. For the third chapter of the peace education curriculum titled Why Peace on Earth Came to an End, the main teaching method is for students to look into historical sources and have a discussion on it. The lesson began with one student sharing her grandmother's story, who suffered as a comfort woman during the Japanese colonial period. Then the student examined some sources talking about World War I and World War II. The purpose of the class was to find the foundations of war. Let me introduce the communication between teachers and students of the class. First, the teacher said, "Raging for 4 years, World War I caused more than 10 million casualties. So why did the Second World War II take place?" Let's take a look at how World War I ended. People agreed on a peace treaty and made a regulation for war criminal states to pay war reparations. However, World War II broke out. What can we learn from this? The student said they did not follow the peace treaty. They did not keep the promise. And then teacher said, "That's right. If we link that point, not keeping the promise, with what we learned from the last lesson, we can understand that the war broke out because public order was destroyed. After World War I, Germany had to cover a huge amount of reparation since they started the war. Moreover, people were living in poverty and life was incredibly difficult for them. Then Adolf Hitler convinced people that they shouldn't stay like that and that they were ones who could choose their own futures for themselves. These words sparked the heart of those who wanted escape from poverty and lead to another war. What do you think about this? Killing others, starting a war, and causing such a great number of casualties. Was it a proper decision to make to live a better life for themselves? Next, the teacher suggests that students deeply examine the causes of World War I, World War II, and colonialism. The teacher provided sources about the Industrial Revolution and on oversupply, colonialism, and imperialism, and students searched for the grounds of war based on the sources. Then they found such facts. The supremacy that some people advocate was only a surface reason, but the true reason behind the war was people's greed. Students also explored the cause of various problems such as war, environmental pollution, and human rights issues. For example, not only about World War I and World War II, but also about the Korean War, Iraq War, Sierra Leone War, Syria War, Vietnam War, the 9/11 terror attacks, the oil war, the Maruta experiment, sexual crime, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, racism, and slave hunting. Finally, they came to understand that it was greed and disorder that stirred up all those issues. This was one case where students understood peace by exploring historical facts during the peace education. When you look into the HWPL peace education curriculum, the lessons include numerous pieces of knowledge and the exploration of nature and historical facts. Through the lesson, students constantly study nature and human history, conclusions on the answer to peace. This kind of exploration is for ourselves and the community to live in peace, which means more than of the past. It becomes the instrument to solve the issue of the present. Students will pay more attention to history when they understand that historical education is not all about memorizing historical facts, but is a subject that gives them something they need. They will discover the use of history to achieve peace. And the second aspect of peace education through history is for students to have a proper sense of history and realize that they are the main agent of history. Lesson 10 of the HWPL education curriculum deals with efforts toward the preservation of heritage, and Lesson 12 talks about completing peace that mankind has longed for. What are the most precious things that your parents have passed down to you? In my case, it is a mindset they have taught me, which is one being honest. In addition, this nation that my ancestors protest from foreign invasion and that has achieved economic growth amidst the ruin after the Korean War is also a valuable heritage to me. Furthermore, for Koreans, the Korean language called Hunminjeongeum is one of the greatest legacy from our ancestors. Among many languages, the Korean language is considered a mysterious language. This is because the Korean language is the only one of which each inventor, each date of proclamation, and the logic of how it was created or learned. There is no other language like Korean language. Therefore, it was designated a UNESCO Memory of the World Register. I'd like to show a Power of Peace Education Lesson 10, which is based on sources about the Korean language. The instructor shows various cultural legacies that are designated as special by UNESCO and taught the importance of heritage and the necessity of preserving heritage. Then students watched the video explaining the Korean alphabet and had class activities to find its outstanding characteristics. These are some outstanding features of the Korean alphabet. The first is it is the only script in the world whose creator, publication date, and principle of creation are exactly given. Second, it can be easily and quickly learned for both reading and writing. UNESCO annually awards the King Sejong Literacy Prize to those who contribute to a crusade against illiteracy in the world. Hangul was created by King Sejong, and the world recognizes it as one of the easiest scripts to learn to read and write, and one of the best scripts to eradicate illiteracy. This is why the name of the award stems from King Sejong. The low literacy rate leads to cultivation of manpower, which can play a key role in rapid national growth. Although Korea went through periods of extreme difficulty, such as the Japanese colonial era and the Korean War, its low rate of illiteracy helped its growth since the 1970s. Third, any sounds in the word can be expressed. Fourth, many sounds can be expressed with a small number of letters. For example, 11,172 different sounds can be made with 24 letters. 300 different sounds with about 70 Japanese letters. 400 different sounds with about 50,000 Chinese letters. Fifth, it has advantages when you use the computer or cell phone. This is why many scholars say that the Korean alphabet is one of the easiest alphabets to learn. Sixth, the sounds of forward are regular. Hangul is pronounced without any change. This means that foreigners can learn Korean easily and translation skills can be developed. Instructors provided two kinds of materials to students. One was about the motivation for and the process of the creation of Hangul by Sejong the Great, who was the fourth king of the Joseon dynasty. The other is about historic efforts to protect Hangul when under Japanese oppression, to try to eradicate Korean culture and letters by making Korean dictionaries during the Japanese colonial era. The logographic Chinese characters were used at the time of Sejong the Great. It was so difficult for the common people that only privileged aristocrats, usually male, could read and write fluently. The majority of Koreans were effectively illiterate before the invention of Hangul. You can imagine how their life was. The Hangul was designated so that even a commoner could learn to read and write. I don't doubt students will learn how much Sejong the Great loved his people. Scholars' efforts to make Korean dictionaries, even while under Japanese oppression during the Japanese colonial era, gives students an opportunity to learn how valuable people consider this heritage and how eager they were to deliver it to their descendants. Thanks to their risk-taking efforts to protect Hangul, it is one of the 20 languages to have its own dictionary among the 3,000 languages existing in the world. In addition, colonial nations that were declared independent after World War II rarely have their own language, but Korea is the only nation that has restored its own language completely. This helps students to build up historical awareness. They realize that what happened in the past affects their lives in the present. Also, they feel thankful for what they are enjoying now, which is due to their ancestors' effort. It makes them think about what they can do for their own descendants. Consequently, they realize that they themselves are the arbiter of history. The daily things that we do unconsciously, such as using disposable products, leaves a bitter legacy for our descendants, like environmental pollution. Those who have historical awareness, or those who understand that the past, present, and future are linked, so that they can solve the issue of present using teachings from the past and try to leave a great legacy for their descendants. Students will learn about what is the most needed legacy for humanity in Chapter 10. What do you think the most needed legacy for humanity is? What is the legacy that you most want to be given? Without doubt, it is peace. I'm sure to leave peace as a legacy for our descendants, we must try to make our lives peaceful and become lovers of peace. Lesson 12, the last chapter titled The Completion of Peace That Mankind Has Longed For, explains how to complete peace by exploring those in human history who worked for peace. Students who learn that they are the subject of history will surely realize that they become the messenger of peace and work for peace first in order to achieve peace. Exploring history is an essential educational activity for the HWPL Peace Education and it has uh, definite purposes, which are to achieve peace in my life and community. In the process, students understand historical value and how to apply history to their lives. Also, they realize they are the subject of history in order to leave peace as a legacy or their descendant as a peace messenger. That is how to learn peace through history and is the purpose of the education. I was grateful that while I was preparing this speech, and I could think about history deeply. In addition, I'm also thankful that I had this chance to introduce peace education to you. I'm convinced once again that for peace education, teaching various historical events and figures can enrich the lecture. If you're also convinced that peace education and history create synergy, I kindly suggest you make a history of peace through teaching this peace education with me. I'd like to conclude my words here hoping that our children can study the history of peace, not the history of war at school. Thank you for listening. And if there are any questions, I shall do my best to answer them.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Yes. Is this the right time to ask? Or
Yeah, 1 minute. I will invite you to ask the question.
yes. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah. Just give me a minute, okay? So, Mr. Jin, thank you so much for this lovely presentation. You had spoken in details that how your organization is working in the area of spreading peace in history education, which is very, very crucial for all of us to understand and imbibe on it. We are very thankful for delivering such peaceful session with all of us and with our audience. But in the meantime, I think now it is a time to ask and take some couple of questions from our end. I just wanted to know that whether participants have written their questions in the chat box, or can we take it there? Yes, somebody was asking the questions. You may ask your questions.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this chance as well. I have not written it down in the chat room. I'll just deliver it here verbally. Okay. My name is Victoria, and it's very nice to see all of you. And then thank you so much for this invaluable knowledge regarding peace education. It's very enlightening. So my question is like, we have seen so much of human efforts in the entire history of humanity to achieve peace. But actually, there are still many places in our societies where there is war and there is no like peace at all. So to what extent do you think like it is possible for achieving peace through this peace education? Up to what extent?
Oh, okay. It is true that there is still war and violence and inequality in the world. Considering the great flow of history, however, I think that the mankind is moving toward peace more and more. I think you will understand it better if compared today's society with that of 100 years ago or 200 years ago. In the past, we were divided into this hierarchy: kings, aristocrats, and commoners, and there was even a terrible system like slaves. And but the concept like human rights was barely existing then. But now we have achieved the abolition of the hierarchical system and a step forward to the era of democracy, where the people are the owner of the country. And as such, the development of democracy, the resolution of poverty, gender, equality, and equality of education shows that mankind is on the path of achieving peace. Of course, it has not been achieved completely, and there are still problems. But these matters came to be resolved automatically, maybe, and it was possible through the effort and sacrifices of the brave people. There were citizens who tried to gain freedom and abolish slavery while living under dictatorships. Of course, there weren't are still many people who stopped these people. However, if the uh, I mean pro peace citizen, peace citizen grow in number, which is also the purpose of our peace education. This anti-peace citizen will be eventually overpowered. The key to peace is to increase the number of pro-peace citizens on this land. You asked me how much it is possible to achieve peace through peace education. So I thought of this. Let's say there is a community of 10 people, and if nine of them have the quantities of being peaceful citizens, uh, wouldn't they be able to stop the every action of the other one person? However, if it is the opposite case, it means there is one peace citizen and 9 able people. It would be difficult for one peaceful citizen to stop the violence of 9 people. It takes a lot of time, maybe many time, to change people through education. However, if peace education is carried out in many places, there will be many peace citizens through education. I think then mankind will achieve peace.
Great. So pertaining to this, Mr. Jin, audience have asked lots of questions, but because of paucity of time, we can't take everything. But I can take two more important questions, which I request you to answer. As you mentioned about positive peace and negative peace, so someone from the viewers have asked, what do we mean by negative peace? Can you elaborate more on it?
Did you catch?
Have you heard me? You want me to repeat the question?
Okay.
You want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. So there are two most important questions which our viewers have asked to you. As you elaborated about positive peace and negative peace, so can you elaborate what does it mean by negative peace? Okay, so one viewer is asking about it, and another question: what strategies we need to take to teach peace education? Please suggest some activities to engage and sensitize students.
Do you mean there? What do we act like for peace? Peace. Do you mean that do you want to know our organization's activities like that for peace education?
They want to know what activities need to be taken to increase, to sensitize students through peace education, for peace education.
What we do for peace education, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Of course,
They're asking.
now we try to contact schools, and uh, we suggest peace education to that school, and also we some of schools we already teach peace education. Of course, we try to contact overseas schools, and we try to that. Of course, we train peace teacher. We train peace teacher, and peace teacher will teach peace for their children and their students. So we do like this.
Okay, so the last question, what role a teacher can play to increase, to promote peace through education? Do you think teacher has any specific role to play to promote peace education in colleges or universities? If yes, then how it is possible?
The connection was really not good, so please repeat again, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you think teacher has any role to promote peace education? Teacher has any role to promote peace education?
Of course, teachers have to teach peace. First of all, I think teachers have to feel, and also they need to feel peace. And because I think the people who experience something, and that people can teach another person same thing. So I think teacher themselves also firstly try to feel the peace and learn the peace, and then I think they can teach another student. So I think teachers first they first they need to learn peace education.
Correct, correct. I agree with you. Teacher has to learn peace education. Then only they will be able to promote peace education. I completely agree with you.
Okay.
Mr. Jin, you have brought a global outlook, in your presentation. So here we discussed about that how Korea is working, your organization to promote peace education everywhere. So I just wanted to, it's not a question, but just need a suggestion from your end that how this can be implemented in India's per se, India's context to implement peace education, what you had discussed today.
I didn't understand what. I'm sorry.
I was asking about the context of your presentation in India's peace education.
India's peace education. My thinking of India peace education. Um, honestly, I couldn't see all of them of the India peace education. So maybe I think if they try to make peace, it will be good for all people. Maybe. I'm sorry.
No problem. I think it's very nice to hear you and understand your presentation, wherein you talk about history and education in two parts, wherein you first explain what is the objective of education, which talks about an individual to grow and develop. So the purpose of education is to change And the purpose of history, not only just a means to record of events, but also helps an individual to understand their past in a better way and to assimilate the knowledge of past in such a way wherein the positive piece can be increased in future of times. So this was a very nicely you have blend these two different subjects together and explained this concept. So I'll just give my concluding remarks after hearing your presentation, Jin, today. I was just reading a research paper which was published by James Page in 2000 on the topic of Can History Teach Us Peace? So here the author argues that we study history to learn from history. Learning peace through history is not easy because the moment someone talks about history, the picture of violence also emerge before us. But violence compels individuals to write, to make sense of what has happened. In fact, it is a violence that most readily forms a theme for history. And we start thinking of making peace, which can be either negative peace or positive peace, which you talked about. So our forefathers and historical personalities have spoken a lot about positive peace, which echoes the idea that each individual is valuable and worthy. Through the learning of past, that is history, the steps of future can be decided. Having said so, if I summarize further, then peace through history can only be possible with utopian approach to history, one that recognizes both the openness of history and openness of our own experience. Thus, I believe that peace is more than a noble hope, but rather a realizable objective for the future. So this is what I had my takeaway, Mr. Jin, after hearing you in today's program. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation to be a speaker in our second international webinar, Faculty Development Program on Pedagogy in Teaching History. So after having a wonderful session from Mr. Li, I think now I'd like to invite our fifth renowned speaker, Mrs. Radha Trivedi. Her brief introduction is that Mrs. Radha Trivedi is born and brought up in Mumbai, and she loves Mumbai, its cosmopolitan culture and food and busy life. She has a master's in education from University of Mumbai. Her subjects of teaching are social studies, history, and geography. She has been a middle school teacher for over 15 years in IB schools in Mumbai. Before that, she worked in the International School of Conakry, that is in Guinea, and the International School of Abidjan at Ivory Coast. She is part of the school visiting team of the IBO, and she is an examiner and assessment author. She has also worked as a consultant to an IB school. Her educational philosophy is that it is up to the teacher to make the lessons such that all students enjoy coming to school and to class. Madam is going to talk about one of the most relevant topic, which we also do it when we want to convince somebody to do some work, that is inspiring students through the learning of history. Thank you, Radha ma'am, for accepting our invitation. I welcome you on behalf of Kaash Foundation and Kaash Foundation CAPD. And over to you to start the session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kavita. My video has been disabled. Can you please ask someone to put it on?
Sure, ma'am. We will just do it. Just give us a minute.
Yeah, it's on now.
Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Radha Trivedi. Kavita has already given an introduction. I currently work at EduBridge International School as a history and humanities teacher. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here today. I thank Dr. Kaash for giving me this opportunity. I thank you, Kavita and Megha, for your support. I'm also very appreciative of the audience here. So many of you have chosen to spend your evening for this session, and I do hope that it will be worth your while. My session with you today is about an IB perspective on ways to get students inspired by history. And I hope you get some takeaways, whether you're teachers already teaching or whether you're B.Ed students. Just give me a minute to share my screen with you. Okay. I hope you're able to see my screen. So there it is, inspiring students through the learning of history, an IB perspective. Just give me a minute. Okay. What are we looking at today? We'll be looking at the following. We'll be looking at learning through inquiry, content versus concept, relating learning to real life, tying our units or the lessons to service. We'll be looking at assessments, and we'll be looking at some ways to overcome limitations. Okay, here is a small movie clip. It is from the movie Mona Lisa. Maybe a lot of you have already watched it. I want you, while you're watching, to think about your impressions about the lesson or about the students or about the teacher. I'm just going to play it now.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
All right. That was Julia Roberts, art history teacher, trying to inspire her students into the learning of history. But she learned a lesson through the process. And we need to watch her second lesson to see how it was. Just give me a minute. Okay, here we go. Second lesson. While you're watching this, you're going to compare the second lesson with the first one, and you're going to think about how's the lesson different. All right, that was the second lesson. I want you to think about both the lessons, compare it. What was different in the second lesson from the first? I'm going to share my screen with you again. Sorry. Yeah. So we looked at a classroom where there was inquiry happening. So what happens in an inquiry-based classroom? Students learn through asking questions. They're curious. They engage with the material in a thoughtful manner. Could be through flipped classroom, which I'll come to later. There is discussion involved, lots of discussion. This could be through group work. Questions are open-ended, not only factual, giving scope for learning about different perspectives. There is also scope for linking learning to concepts and content. This inquiry-based classroom is summed up pretty nicely by the leader of inquiry in today's world, Kat Murdoch. Let us hear her talk about inquiry.
Inquiry is something we all do every day. It's how people learn. We're born curious. We need that curiosity in order to survive, in order to make meaning. People are natural inquirers, and inquiry learning in the classroom, to a degree, builds on that, uses that to the teacher's advantage. Unfortunately, what happens still in many schools is that the classroom is almost like kryptonite to inquiry. Because kids often enter a classroom and in many ways they're asked to do the opposite of inquiry, to sit down, to be quiet, to dominantly listen, to answer teachers' questions rather than being invited to ask their own, that can have the effect then of diminishing that very natural hunger to find out. So inquiry as an approach from a teacher's perspective is designed to sustain, nurture and grow that natural disposition that we all have to find out, to be researchers, both internally and externally.
Okay, so that was Kat Murdoch on the importance of inquiry and how teachers should not only think about asking questions to students, but should also think about listening to the students' questions. Maybe I missed something. Okay, yeah, look at this last line here. There is scope for linking learning to concepts and content. So how are they different? We have to look at content and concept. So what's a concept? A concept is a big idea. It's universal, it's timeless. When I say timeless, it means it's not bound by place or time. It is relevant in all times, in all places. Studying concepts leads to enduring and transferable understandings. All this has been said by the guru of concept-based learning, who's this lady over here. She is Lynn Erickson. Concept versus fact. Facts are isolated pieces of information. India got freedom in 1947 is a fact. Freedom, on the other hand, is a concept. It is a big idea. For example, if you're teaching the Indian struggle for independence, as a topic, it is locked in time and place. Students cannot see patterns. They cannot compare, they cannot contrast with other freedom struggles. They will learn facts which they may forget. They will not get to see different perspectives, which is so important to the teaching of history. On the other hand, when you teach the concept of freedom, for example, you will still teach the Indian struggle for independence, but you will look at freedom as a concept. Indian freedom struggle versus that of any other country. Maybe you can ask students to research about this. Pick a country, compare Indian freedom struggle with that of the other country. What are the similarities? What are the differences? Is there a pattern in freedom struggles? Or are all freedom struggles different and situation-based? The teacher can take this further. What is freedom? Is there more than one kind? What about freedom from oppression of, say, patriarchy? Does that classify as a freedom struggle? Freedom for right of expression. Does everyone have it? In a free democratic country, does every citizen have freedom? Is one kind of freedom more important than others? Teachers can ask these questions, or it could be raised by students. Students can find the answers and in the next class, have a discussion. Concepts versus fact. Indian freedom struggle through this approach has been transformed from a narrow topic to a multifaceted conceptual study that does not have clear answers. And everyone has a different perspective. And it is important to talk about perspectives so that students know that there is more than one way of looking at something. And this gives students an opportunity to relate learning to real life. No teaching of history is complete without relating learning to real life. And there are many ways you could do this. You could get experts to come to class to talk to the students. I'll give you an example of mine. In a previous school, I was very friendly with this helper in the school, who I learned was a migrant. So he had come from an interior part of Maharashtra. He had come to Bombay looking for a job. And he was also looking for a relative who stayed here. He spent 6 months on the street, sleeping on the footpaths, doing odd jobs till he found this relative, eating vada pav for lunch and dinner. And then one day, just by sheer coincidence, he found this person who was a helper in another institution that the same owner ran. And that relative of his put up his name for a job, and then he got a job in my school. He spoke about transition from the street to a small room in a slum shared by other people. They had to divide the rent. He talked about not knowing who the slum dwellers were, different languages, a lot of difficulty in getting adjusted. He spoke about culture shock, how he saw the women and the ladies and the girls dressed. And from his hometown, they were dressed conservatively. This was a culture shock to him. And then he got used to it. And all this while, children were busy writing down notes, looking for what question to ask. And just before he came to my class, I had asked the students to prepare questions, and I had looked at the questions to make sure that none of the questions are derogatory or insulting or could be offensive in any manner. So I did a filter, and they were busy asking these questions and getting all this information. And after the interview, we thanked him and he left. From then on, this helper was not a nameless, faceless helper in school. Students said, hi to him by name. Hi, whatever his name is, we'll call him Anil for, I don't want to reveal his identity. Hi, Anil Bhaiya, how are you? And how's your family and how's everything? So he became someone who emerged from the textbook, a real life example they could relate to, they could talk to. Migration was no longer some abstract concept. It became so tangible, so real through Anil. So that's one example. You get experts to class and you can bring history to life in more ways than one, and historical concepts. Another good way of relating to real life is taking students on field trips. Now, the field trips have been extremely underrated, and it's an inconvenience. Permissions have to be taken. A day has to be set aside. You will miss your class, but if you take students on field trips, the learning that they get over there will not ever match the learning that they get from sources and from books and from websites. So another example of mine, I took my students to this Deonar dumping ground. We were looking at poverty and in touch with they were working with these rack pickers, and through them we went on this field trip, and we interviewed the rack pickers. Again, we did the same thing, filters, questions. I looked at the questions, making sure that all questions are friendly and not offensive. While framing, and the students were making these questions in group. So while framing questions, one of the students asked, Miss Radha, do these people buy water? Where do they get water from? And I told them, they're poor. How will they buy water? So they must be getting free water from somewhere. When we go, we'll find out. So we went, the child asked a question, where do you get water from? And the rack picker we were interviewing answered, we buy it. There are trucks that supply water. They come to the locality and we have to buy water at the going rate, whatever the rate is. And a large part of what we earn goes into getting water, because we have to get water for bathing, for cooking, for all our needs. So that was a revelation to me. Who had told the child, don't ask this question, or, how can they buy water? But they were buying water. And other questions, they said, because they throw this wet garbage, it decomposes, and there's always this gas just above it. And when the summers get too hot, sometimes it catches fire. And the whole dumping ground, large parts of it start burning. And when they burn, can't go to work. When they can't go to work, they can't fend for their families. They have no water. It's a horrible situation. And we wouldn't have known any of this if we wouldn't have gone on the field trip and asked these questions. They also said that the municipal corporation gives them like badges before they are let into the dumping ground. But they will never make them their employees. So I'm not getting into the politics of that now. But suffice to say that this field trip was an eye-opener on so many fronts. Did you know that there are separate areas for garbage from North Mumbai and separate areas for garbage from South Mumbai, which are supposed to be more lucrative and supposed to be, that's supposed to be, more valuable things dropped in the garbage. So there are separate areas. There are different people selected for picking. Oh my God, it's like it's a system of its own. And these rack pickers have to sell to a particular person only. So whatever they pick, they can't sell in the open market. They have to sell to a particular person who's in that locality for a lesser price. We knew so much about the rack pickers of Devnar just because we went on the field trip. So if you are thinking of relating history to real life, field trips is a very good example. Then about movies. Movies are so captivating. The children we teach, they love watching movies. Movies tell stories and they tell it in a very good way. So whenever there is an opportunity, I always try to show movies or clips of movies to teach children about a particular time of history or about a particular person. So when we were studying the Indian struggle of independence, I showed them, this Oscar-winning movie, Richard Attenborough's movie Gandhi. I showed them that movie. You can also show two clips, Gandhi, Bhagat Singh, and then try and get a comparison between the two styles, violence versus non-violence, what was better, and so on. You can also go into the biases, which are so important for history. So Richard Attenborough, who showed Gandhi in such a good light, what was his political leaning? What party did he belong to? Why did he have such a good opinion? And there are so many things you can do with movies. Imagination is your only limitation. Then about telling stories and showing videos and pictures. So when I was teaching about Hitler during World War II and the discrimination and the Holocaust and the plight of the Jews, I try to relate it to the real life discrimination that happens in India. So have they seen it? I showed them videos about manual scavengers, rack pickers, crematorium workers. Let them watch the people talk about their lives. And invariably, it will raise so many questions. Get them to debate. For example, if it is a Bhagat Singh and Gandhi, I was talking about what is better, violence or non-violence? Or you could say Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, which is better? And why? Ask questions. That's another way to make them think. Is this fair? Being born into a particular caste, is it really karma? Can one individual change the status quo? This person here, he is Bezwada Wilson. He is a social activist who fights for the rights of the manual scavengers. Bezwada Wilson's parents were manual scavengers. He grew up as a manual scavenger. And then he decided that he wants no part of it. And then he's actively engaged to fight the battle. So your questions can be, who's a leader? What qualities must a leader have? Does Bezwada Wilson have the same status as Gandhi? Are the two fights, are they of equal status? Or Kailash Satyarthi, who got the Nobel Prize, who shared it with Malala for rescuing children who are trafficked and taking care of them. Is he a leader? So who are leaders? These questions will get them to look at all sides, broaden their perspective, and will create a drive to help the target community. Which brings us to tying units or your lessons to service. All kinds of service is important, whether it is paying money to somebody in need, whether it is donating things, whether it is helping NGOs, every kind of service is important. But it is contextual service, service which has a context that makes service relevant to the students. Service is more than just ours. It has to be a part of our lives. We cannot wait for the government to do everything for us. And students need to feel that they have the power to help another person or help another community. I'm going to give you two examples of service. One is service which I did in my school, which was for the Hijra community. The other is service for the street children. I'll just give you a 2-minute break and then we'll come back.
अनम्यूट करने को लगा मैं क्या बोलूं नहीं चलो कौन करने चलो मेरा मोबाइल दे दो जरा तुम yes, Radha ma'am, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. I can.
Okay, okay. So, have you done with your session?
No. I said I'm giving them a 2-minute break.
Acha, okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. I hope you have had some time to assimilate all this information or to take a break or stretch or do whatever. So we are back. I'll share my screen with you. All right. So I was talking about service examples. These are 2 examples from my the earlier schools that I worked for. So I was teaching discrimination, which I teach as part of history. We learned about Hitler. We learned about the discrimination of the Jewish people. Then we had children were asked to research about current discrimination in India or parts of the world. So we also discussed certain topics. So we discussed the LGBTQ community, discrimination against them. We looked at Islamophobia. We looked at gender discrimination. We looked at caste discrimination. We looked at all of this. I was, it's always in the back of my mind to try and make this jump out of the textbooks and become real. So I contacted an NGO I knew, and the same NGO that took my children, to the rack picker, it's the same NGO. So I called them and I said, look, I'm teaching my children discrimination, and do you have any connection with any person from the Hijra community? So they said, yes, I'll check. Then they got back to me and said, one of the people they know this Hijra, who calls herself Haya Khan. So then they put me in touch with Haya. So I spoke to Haya. I said, will you come to my class and talk about what discrimination you and your community members face? So she said, no problem. Then we fixed up a day. So this is during my class time. So during my class time, I went down to the gate. The security was not letting her in. Even though I had told a guest will be coming, they did not expect it will be Haya Khan the Hijra. So I went and told, no, this is my guest. And I brought her into class. And again, we had already done all these questions and, what to ask Haya and all that. And first Haya spoke to us about her life. She said she was abandoned as a child, probably because they knew that she was a Hijra. They abandoned her, and she was brought up by the people of the Hijra community. She had to sing and dance for a living. See, we live in a country of contrasts, and like I don't know the right word for it, controversial. So on one hand, we have people who believe that Hijras bring good luck and they have some kind of power. So for any child that is newborn, the family calls Hijras, they bless the baby, and they are given a token, a money or something valuable, and then the Hijras go away. So that's one side of how our society treats them. But there's a whole other side where, they are looked upon with disdain and people are uncomfortable around them. They think they're all crooks and cheats, and they look down upon them because many of them are prostitutes. They, are sex workers, which is a more diplomatically correct word. They are sex workers and they're looked down upon by society. So Haya spoke about all of this. And she said, I don't get any jobs when I apply for jobs. When I apply as Haya Khan, they call me. But the minute they say I'm a hijra, they said vacancy bhar gaya, full ho gaya. Then how am I supposed to earn a living? So I have to beg at traffic signals. I have to ask people for money. And then we have to sing and dance when we are called. And no, apart from that, when we are ill, we go to a hospital, we have to stand in the queue. People don't want to stand in the same queue as us, so they move away. And we are made to feel awkward, we are made to feel embarrassed. And children were listening to every word that Haya was saying. Suddenly now Haya is somebody real. She's a friend. She's the person who is sitting across from them, and she's having all these troubles. So, already in their mind, they're thinking, oh my God, we have to help Haya. We have to help the community somehow. So Haya tells us a story and tells us about the problems with the doctors and the jobs and how she said her friend, a very good hijra friend of hers, died of AIDS. And she said, because we have such less AIDS awareness, but who will give us awareness? Most of us are illiterate. Schools don't take us. We are school dropouts. We are illiterate. We have no way of knowing a lot of information. Who will give us this information? So, saying her stories, Haya left. The children told me, Miss Radha, we have to help Haya. I said, okay, how can we help her? So they said, give us a double period and we will sit and we will discuss it. So I said, okay, you can take the class. So in the next class, they sat and they discussed it. And after that, they told me, Ms. Radha, we have a plan. So I said, okay, what's your plan? So they said, look, we have to do this in multiple ways because Haya has multiple problems. So first we have to raise awareness about the Hijra community so that people will not frown on them or have a bad attitude or look at them with disdain and all of this. So that is one thing, attitude changing. Then we have to find some doctors or some mobile dispensaries who can go to the locality where Haya is staying because it is not easy for them to go to the doctors. Then third thing you have to do is we will talk to our science teachers. We will create posters about, how to protect yourself and not catch AIDS and how to be safe. And we will do all of that. So they said, please, this is what we want to do for her. I said, okay, very good. They also said that part of this attitude changing, just like Haya spoke to us in person, Haya has to speak to our school community. So they said, let's start with the school community. Haya has to speak to the school community in person because that will change their attitude. So then, the planning got more and more grand and a small plan became a huge plan. And just from calling the Hijra community, we decided to call Manabi Bandopadhyay, who was the principal of the first transgender principal of a college in West Bengal. We wanted to call her. I had also called Miss Kalki Subramaniam, who was born a male, but whose gender identity was the female. And she had grown up, her family, unlike Haya, her family supported her, educated her. And then she opened this Sahodari Foundation in South, in Coimbatore. And she was helping people like her. So I had asked, before calling Haya, I had asked Kalki to come in and, through Skype, speak to our students. So they said, let's call Kalki, let's call Manabi. Then there was this Lakshmi, who was, she's an MP, also a transgender person, who was an MP in Mumbai. They said, let's call Lakshmi and we'll make this, grand event. We'll call all these people, we'll call Haya and her community. And then I said, okay, but we have to pay for the air tickets of Manabi and Lakshmi was from Mumbai, but we had to pay air tickets for Manabi and Kalki. And we have to put them at a hotel for 2 days or whatever. So where is the money going to come from? So they said, okay, so let's make this a gala dinner event. so we will find out what a good dinner costs, and then we will up the price by adding the price of the tickets and all that, and then we will sell tickets, and parents and students will buy tickets, and then we will have this. And we also timed it in October, first week or second week of October, which is I think it's a discrimination month. I don't remember now, but we had the literacy week in that week, and the last day of this literacy week was this event. I had to give so much of my class time for all this team. So there was the celebration, what is that? Publicity team. There was the ticket printing team. There was the costing team. There was the food team who will decide about the food. There was the team who will take care of the guests when they come. Students did it all by themselves. I was on the periphery, just going around and making sure that they are all doing their work. So all this was done. The day dawned. Lakshmi didn't come. She said she has some urgent appointment, but all the others came. The children went, took permission from the school, went and got the guests from the airport, put them in the hotel, went again in the evening to bring them. Then we prepared students to speak in Hindi, because Haya's community may not understand English, so we needed Hindi translators. We needed students who took Hindi as a subject to ask questions in Hindi. Then we had teachers as translators to translate what Kalki is from the south, doesn't speak Hindi. So the teacher would translate what Kalki said into Hindi so that the other Hijra members, the people who are present, understand. And the event was a huge success. We called newspapers, we called people from the newspapers, people from the television channel. At the end of it, there was an interaction. So Hijra had got her guru. So she said at the beginning, I'll ask the permission of my guru. So I said, okay. So Hijra brought along the guru and a few of her members. The guru said, Ms. Radha and children, she said this in Hindi. She said, we are always called to sing and dance for others. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So we had to sell tickets. And at the beginning, not many tickets were being sold. So the children said, Ms. Radha, let's do one thing. Let's have song and dance performances. So every grade we will do audition. They will come and perform a song, and we will have several songs, interspersed in the event. And parents will come to watch their children dance and sing. So at least for that, they'll be ready to pay for the ticket money. So I said, good idea. So we had all these children dancing and singing in between. The latest Bollywood hits or something classical, they'll come and sing and go away, and come and dance and go away. So the guru said, this is the first time somebody is singing and dancing for us. And everybody clapped and huge applause. Parents were handed the microphones. They said, this is such an eye-opening thing. Now they are people, and we will not have this attitude about them anymore. So it was good. And what really nailed it, when I realized that this is it, the event has succeeded. When a security staff, remember the one who used to stop Haya at the gate? He came and told me, Ms. Radha, and he told me this in Hindi. I had thought, I did not think very highly of these people. But after listening to all of this, I feel they are humans. Insaan hai. And, that was a moment when my hair stood on end and I said, my God, we have done it. If one person can think like this, slowly and surely, the change will come if this is what we do. So that was it. And the other plans did not fall through. The doctor going to the Hijra community and the AIDS awareness, because Haya stopped taking our calls. Till today, I don't know the reason why. Haya stopped responding to my calls, stopped talking to me. I don't know what happened. Was it a fight? She goes to other people, she can take money. I don't know the reason, but the other things did not happen. But that was the service grade 10 students did. Okay, so this was done by grade 10, students who have to prepare for the exams. We also have exams. At that time, that school had the IGCSE exams, they had the assessment exams, but our children did all of this because they wanted to do it. They wanted to do it for hire. They wanted to do it for the person who sat in front of them and said how difficult her life is. That is a service example of the Hijra community, and it is etched in my memory. I will never forget it as long as I live. This is an example for the kinds of things you can do to tie service to your history units, to make it more relevant, to make history come alive. I have one more example. So remember I told you about this migration unit when I got in the school helper and we spoke to him in class. Now, I had this other NGO I was in contact with, and we had to do some investigation. So we had to collect data. That's part of a skill that students develop. Primary source, collect data, analyze data. Okay. So I said, I knew that NGO was working with street children. So I said, please, may we visit your street kids, and can we ask them a few questions? So the NGO said, no problem, you're welcome. So this was a place in Bandra. There was this huge open ground. And on one side, there was all this slums, not even slums, you know, the blue plastic sheet houses where the poor people lived, migrants lived on one side, and there's a huge ground. So the NGO would take a bus. They would take a bus and go to the ground at a particular time. The children know, the street children know that the bus will come at this time. They all come and wait for the bus. So then the NGO tells them, you study for 1 hour inside the bus, and then you will get food to eat. So this was their bargain. Because they wanted to eat the food, the children will come to the bus and learn. They learn from the bhaiyas and they will learn from the didis. And after that 1 hour, they will go. They will be given packets of food and they will go away. So they said, you can come at this time and ask questions. So, okay, we made all questions. I looked at the questions. Then we went to the place. Then after the children ate the food, then the NGO people said, these people have come. They want to ask a few questions. So they said, okay. So then we split. So each, a couple of our children with one street kid, a couple of other children with other kids, like that. We split all the children. And I was going around and checking what everybody is asking. So then it got over. We thanked the NGO. We said bye to the kids. We took a photo with them and we came back. Next class, we were reflecting on what we learned about street kids who are often children of migrants. So one child said, Miss, I asked them, how many times you eat in a day? Now, I had approved that question. I mean, stupid me. Now, when I'm reflecting, I think, you know, how can I assume that they eat 3 times a day or 2 times a day? But I had approved it. So the child had asked it. And the kid looked at him and said, एक ही टाइम का होता है ना खाना? कितना टाइम खाते हैं लोग? We eat food is eaten only once a day, isn't it? How many times do people eat? And the child sat and looked at us. We eat 3 meals and then we snack on all these chips and we have Coke and we keep overeating. And look at these kids, they have that 1 meal and that probably comes from the bus. And another student said, Miss, do you know, they have to walk long to get water. They have no water pipes where they stay. Yes, of course, illegal settlement. See, so no BMC water pipes. And the third one said, Miss, do you see their hair and their skin? It's all caked with dirt because they don't have water. Miss, let's do something. We should give them water. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do? So they said, Miss, can we ask BMC to lay a pipe? I said, look, let's call the NGO because they have worked with these people and they're working with the kids. Let's call them to school. So again, in my school time, in my class time, NGO people came. Then my students said, can we lay a pipe? I already asked all this. We have approached the BMC several times. They have refused. BMC will not agree because it is illegal. So he said, okay, I have an idea, if you're okay with it. Okay, we said, what's the idea? So he said, we give food, but we don't give water. So maybe 1 year's supply of water for these kids, you can provide. So I asked the kids, are you okay? And they said, yeah. We'll provide 1 year's water. So the NGOs went. And my children started discussing, saying, let's do this, let's raise money. How do we raise money? Okay, let's have a sporting event. Sporting event is something that every child will participate. They will pay to participate. Let's raise money by having a sporting event. So we had something called play for every drop. See, every time I'm only on the periphery, I'm on the edges. It's the students who are planning, who are thinking, and they just want approval from me. They want permissions from me, but they are doing everything. So they said, play for every drop. That's what we'll call it. And slowly the event started taking shape. Again, children got divided into teams. Somebody designed tickets, somebody sold tickets, some team decided what food they'll bring in on that day. Price of the tickets were calculated accordingly. We had play for every drop. After we paid for the food and we paid all the expenses, children sat and counted the money. Yes, money is not enough. Whatever we agreed to pay for the water, we have not collected that. I said, it doesn't matter. Whatever we have collected, we will give. If we have not, if for the year we don't have, we will pay for 3/4 of the year. They said, no, miss. We have agreed for the year. We have to give for the year. I said, okay, so what do you want to do? They said, miss, we will have it next year. I said, but I am not teaching you next year. They said, doesn't matter, miss. We'll connect with you and we will have the same program next year so that we can give the NGO the money we have said we will give. I said, okay. Next year came. They all came to me, met me during lunch breaks, after school. Again, we planned play for every drop 2. Version 2. Version 2 happened. Children sat and collected the money. Yay, we have money to give them. Let's call the NGO. I said, okay. We called the NGO. NGO said, look, we have a problem. So the children said, what's the problem? We have the money. So the NGO said, look, why do we ask the children to come to the bus? So that they learn and we get them ready to be put in a municipal school. We make them school ready. And this particular group of students, they were ready and they have got admission in municipal schools and schools have water. So we will not, we cannot use our money for this. 2 years the children had worked. They were so crestfallen. What to do? Then the NGO said, okay, look, we have a suggestion, if you're okay with it. So the children said, okay, what suggestion? So they said, look, we are opening a new school in Thane. But we have not got the BMC permission and all, that is in process. But right now we have put tin sheds and there is no plumbing, no electricity, nothing. And parents come, bring the kids to school. So who are these parents? They could be migrants, they could be very poor people, they could be street vendors. So they said they are bringing water in like small utensils and also the child can have water in the school. So this water, this money, will you give water for us for 1 year in the school? So the children said, we are very happy, okay. So then we got into a, negotiation with, not a negotiation, like a semi-contract with them, that every month we will supply, like every day we will supply 1 can of Bisleri water. They said that will last them like for 3 days, and they calculated, and then we contacted a Bisleri agent who said he will drop it at that Thana school, and then they will send an email saying, yes, we got this month. So that is the episode about the street children, and how from teaching history of migration, how we related it to the real life of actually interviewing street kids who are children of migrants, and how there was a strong urge in my students to do something for these kids. And why did they do that? Because they had a context. They had learned about it. They knew about it. They had spoken to these people. They were real people now, not something some textbook or some source is saying. And when these people were real, my students wanted to do something for them. So that is the episode of the street children. Okay. We now come to the types of assessments that we have. So very quickly, I'm going to take you through this. In an IB school, we don't do marks in the middle years program. We have something called criterion, and each criterion has points. So we have criterion A, B, C, D. Every subject has these 4 criterions. But what the criterions are depends on the subject. What is in your screen in front of you is the criterion for INS, which is history, humanities, these subjects. So we have criterion A, which is just knowledge and understanding. So it is describe, explain, examples, terminology, not very high order thinking. That's criterion A. Then we have a criterion for research, because research is such an important part of history. We call that investigation. Criterion B is investigation. In the investigation, the skills are formulating a research question, justifying a research question, making an action plan. How will you carry out your research, a plan for that? Then we get students to evaluate the research. What is good? What is not good? What should have they done? What will they do now if given an opportunity? We also talk about methods to document sources. We talk about primary sources, secondary sources. How will they document? That's criterion B. Then we have criterion C, which is communication. So citation, so important. It is intellectual property rights, somebody's work. If you're borrowing, you have to cite it. Then we look at the structure of the response. If it's an essay, what should it look like? If it's a report, what it should look like, and so on and so forth. Then we look at the clarity and the coherence. How clear is the communication? This is criterion B. Then we have, this is criterion C. Then we have criterion D, which is critical thinking, where we say, we teach them evaluation of sources, how to evaluate a source, how to look at the origin, purpose, values, and limitations of the source, how to synthesize information to make well-supported arguments, how to analyze, how to look at perspectives. There are different ways in which the students can present their learning. It could be an essay writing, where they could write persuasive essays or descriptive essays. We could do point evidence explanation. They could submit reports. They could create presentations. They could have podcasts. They can make iMovies. They can create a website. They can write poems. They can write stories. They can create a brochure, write a newspaper article. So depending on the topic, depending on the unit, depending on what is what is suitable, and depending on the child's interests, the children can use one or the other types of demonstrating their learning. And then we have something called IDU, which is interdisciplinary unit. Now, this is a very unique feature of the MYP, which is a middle years program of the IB, where there is an attempt to show that subjects are not compartmentalized. They are not in different compartments. They merge. If you want to make a table, like actually cut wood and create a table, you would have to know so many subjects. You would have to know mathematics, you will have to know physics. I don't know, you'll have to know aesthetics, design, so many things. So it's like that. So they are saying that for solving any problem, even if we solve the problem of Haya, or we want to solve the problem of the street kids, children can't use one subject. They can't do it by just history and emotions. They need different subjects. So this interdisciplinary unit is when two subjects, generally two, sometimes three subjects come together to create a product that is a synthesis of the subjects. So for example, if I teach discrimination and the art teacher is teaching the same thing, the product can be paintings showing discrimination. So I will look at whether they have learned what I have taught them. And the art teacher will look at the style and the texture and whatever he has taught, and the artists, whether that comes through. So that is the IDU, which is also an assessment. Okay. I have to complete portion. This is what I say all the time. All teachers say this, regardless of the boards they teach. I have to complete portion. How am I supposed to do all this? I say it too. But there are ways in which it can be done to some extent. We can do something called a flipped classroom. Many of you might already be familiar with this, but for those who are not, in a traditional classroom, the teacher explains, then gives homework. Students go home and do the homework. By then they have forgotten some part of what the teacher has said. They also don't know how to do some questions. The homework is not done properly. The learning is incomplete. In a flipped classroom, you flip it. So you give the work at home. So I could give, say, some thoughts about Martin Luther King, accompanied by some questions. So always a good idea to have questions and have the students answer. So they are actively reading and not passively reading. So reading and saying, okay, now I'll speak about it in the class tomorrow, and shut the book or the computer or whatever. So to prevent that, you give questions. So the students answer the questions. Some of them they answer correctly, some of them they don't because they don't know, and they come to class. And in class, they talk about all these answers. So maybe the teacher can make groups. Each group can talk about some questions, and then some group answers. Everybody pitches in. Oh, that's a new idea they have not heard before. This is a new idea. Oh, this is a new way of looking at it, which they didn't think about. But three other students in the classroom have said it. Oh, Miss Radha is giving her inputs as well. That is so much learning now, because they have all engaged with the material. They have used their eyes, they have used their ears, they have used their mouth. So many senses are engaged, and the information stays with them for longer. And the good thing is, for me, I managed to complete my portion because lots of what I want them to do in class, I get them to do at home through flipped classroom. Definitely we have to discuss it. I cannot say read it and it's self-study. They come back, we discuss it. That's one way. Another thing is, if you have topics, like for us, I do the e-assessment, or even with the IGCSE, that's a list of topics. So what I do is, I connect the topics. I look for themes. How can I connect these topics? Are they connected by a concept? Are they connected by any other theme? So I connect the topics and I teach it that way in a connected manner. That saves time and I can touch on concepts. So for example, we have significant individuals as a topic. We have rights and social protests as a topic. So I combine them. I teach Martin Luther King, US civil rights, that is a rights and social protest, and the significant individual are the people who worked for the rights like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and all these people. So I combine it so that it's easier for me. It is something you can think of. And in any topic, look for what will get the attention of the students, what is relevant to them. For example, this year, see, every year I teach differently. So, because it also has to be relevant to what's happening currently. So this year when I started discrimination, I didn't tell them what the unit was. I said, and this was flipped classroom. So they had for homework. Watch the video of George Floyd being killed by the cop. And I had a question. Why are they doing this? One question only. Students came back. All kinds of discussions about racism, inferiority, white superiority because of colonization, Black Lives Matter. Somebody said, why are we talking about George Floyd and this cop? When in India, we have this Jairaj and this Beenix who were killed in police custody. Why can't we talk about that? All kinds of topics. And because every individual got something different from his perspective, we looked at everybody's perspective. And we got to learn so many new things. And they were hooked from the word go. Because they thought, okay, this is going to be something very, if I had told them I'm going to teach you what happened in 1960 in the US, there was this person called Martin Luther King. I don't know if it would have had the same interest as this video inspired. So that's another thing. Hook the children's attention, try and get them to, look at something current that's happening around them that they hear, and then link it to what you're going to teach, and it will be a different experience. And at the end, be creative. I'm an extremely non-creative person, but in an effort to have my students inspired by history, I try to find opportunities to make the lesson more interesting. So I think we have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening to all my stories and to my information. This is a URL of all the sources that I have used. I hand this back to Kavita and Megha now, and I will stop sharing.
Yes, Radha ma'am, what a session. I mean, it was a big takeaway for all of us listening to you. You have not just connected the audience, but you have taught, I mean, not taught, but you have explained the importance of case study and the various aspects which help us to understand the teaching and learning of history, very curious and important. I just want to share one thing after listening to you, that though I have become a faculty of management, but throughout in my academic year, I was a student of history. So history was one of my most favorite subjects. History was one of my most favorite subject. I did my bachelor's, I did my master's, and like others, I also felt that initially history is just about chronology. My father wanted me to pursue civil services exams. So he said, take history, you will get maximum question out of it. But when I enrolled for my course, my teacher like you had helped me to understand history in a better way. And now history has given me a chance of visualization the situations so that I can relate myself even in management studies in a more nice way. Very nicely this has been talked about. So few questions which audience has raised when you were giving us this topic, ma'am. Just a minute, I'm just seeing. Ma'am, as you talked about the field trip study, I mean, the way you have just helped students to get connect with community services and the whole experience you have shared. So one student is asking that what changes did you observe in your students after that visit and what was the reaction of the parents?
Okay, so very good questions. So we have to sensitize our parents also, because a lot of parents were not ready to send the children for this, especially the Devnar visit. They said it's unhygienic and our children will fall ill. So we had to educate the parents about the importance of the field trip, and we said we'll take necessary precautions. We took sanitizers, gloves, pretty much like what we are doing now. But I said no masks, because we cannot tell those people that your smell offends us or where you live offends our nostrils. So I said no masks, but I said we'll take other precautions. So yes, we have to educate parents. And there were some children immediately took to it. See, we are all different individuals. Some children immediately I could see a change and they wanted to be connected. They wrote about it in the newsletters. They would come to me and say, how can I make a difference? What can I do? Whereas other children, it was a very good experience for them and a full stop. The thing with attitude change is you do not see it happen immediately. That is a problem that teachers face. So if I do service, I will not see the effects of it today, but 10 years down the line, it will change the students. And unfortunately, I will not be able to see it. So very good questions. Yes, attitude change is very difficult, doesn't happen overnight. Because see, we are the product of our experiences. Some things have been ingrained into us. Some things our parents have told us. Parents think that way, so we think that way. So for all of this to get out of our system is going to take time. So it will not happen overnight. You will not see changes overnight. If you do see changes, you're lucky. But you need to have faith that it will happen someday. I hope I have answered your question. You're on mute.
I'm just trying to open it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So technology sometimes take you ahead, sometimes stops you also to say something. Ma'am, another very interesting question, which is your, what challenges do you face as a teacher with respect to the participation of students? Are all involved? If yes, then how?
Okay, so as a teacher, I don't know the layout of your classroom. Sometimes structurally it is laid in a certain way and you can't change. I am very lucky to be in a classroom which has desks and chairs, so I can move them around. I always make students sit in groups. Okay. There is something called teacher talk time, TTT. It cannot be more than, in a 40-minute lesson, it cannot be more than 10 minutes. Today, I have surpassed all teacher talk time. I have been talking throughout. But in a class, the teacher cannot talk more than 10 minutes. All the discussion has to come from the students. When they are, see, the beauty of small groups is, you might be scared to tell the whole class, but you might not be scared to tell the small group of 4 children who are sitting with you. So everybody participates. Strong learn from the weak, depending on how you group them. even if they don't answer me, I have the satisfaction that they have discussed among themselves. And when one group shares with the class, other groups have to add, or other groups have to say what is wrong, or other groups have to give their input. So in this way, everybody participates, though they may not directly address me. So if it is possible for you to do it in your classes, I would advocate small groups. Please ask, give any work that you have in small groups, and be the facilitator, don't be the teacher. One of the things I tell my children is, you have technology, okay? You know more than me. I cannot know 10,000 plus years of history. How will I know it all? So I have to accept that you know more than me. I am not here because I know more than you. I'm here because I know how to teach. So I start the class with that. Then I can make mistakes. I make spelling errors. Just, those dyslexic children, just to make them comfortable, I make spelling errors on the board and I ask, okay, is it a mistake? Can you correct? And this is a notion that I also had when I started teaching. I finished my MEd in 1999. I started teaching. I was a very traditional, conservative teacher. Teachers know everything. Students have to respect the teacher. And I would demand this respect. And teacher has to know everything. Teacher is perfect. So after a long time, and I've become wise, I've got more gray hair now. And I've realized that they will respect you for the kind of teacher you are, notwithstanding the mistakes you make. And now my making mistakes has emboldened other children to say, okay, Ms. Radha, what is the spelling? I ask somebody else, okay, what's the spelling? So there's no shame in not knowing. There's no shame anymore. Because I stand in the front of the class and say, hey, I don't know. They say, Ms. Radha, this is pronounced incorrectly. I say, oh, all right. I learned something. What's the correct pronunciation? Can you check? Put it on whatever, this Google pronounce whatever, or the whole class listens, we all learn together. So since I started all this, everybody participates. So you have to be humble. You have to be humble. You cannot be this teacher, I know everything. I'm a learner. I can learn from you. I can make mistakes. And then everybody participates. We all learn together.
Correct. Correct, ma'am. This is what the education is all about in the current scenario. So, ma'am, the last question. As you mentioned, I just got fascinated the way you have narrated this story about community services. So we all accept that field trip is crucial, but it is not being supported much in current education system. So there is internship. We are now has come wherein history student also go for internship. But is it enough? If it is not, that what other alternatives in teaching of history can be put?
You have technology, you have your phone, you can have Skype interviews, you can use technology, bring the person to your class like I did, because Kalki initially was in Coimbatore. Remember the person, the transgender,
yes,
born as a boy but identifying as a girl, woman. We had a Skype interview. So, but talking to the people is so important, and that cannot be substituted. So if they cannot come to your class, bring them through WhatsApp, bring them through Skype, but bring them in.
Yes, very correct. Yes, ma'am, agree. So I think here there are a lot of learning has been happening in your session. I basically inspire. I have small children, so I basically use history learning to inspire them. But nonetheless, it is very, very relevant, irrespective of everyone. I just want to quote one businessman, Mr. Warren Buffett, which everyone knows about him, very famous economist and businessman. He said once, it is more important to look out the windshield than in the rear view mirror. So rear view mirror give you the chance to look future, but it is also very important to look your past. Then only you will become more mature, and accordingly you will start performing in a better way. That's the reason history is not just a subject. It is a mother of all subjects. Whether anyone belongs to any discipline, whether you belong to any discipline, to find the facts, we ask about history. The big takeaway for me from your session, ma'am, Pedagogy is very important, which history teacher should adapt as per the class environment. Inquiry-based learning is effective than rote learning. It is important to let students aware that while studying history, you are not just learning and recording events in chronological format, but also help you to increase the cognitive ability provided it relates learning to real life. Thank you so much, Radha ma'am, for your wonderful session.
Thank you. I didn't use those wonderful words that you have done.
Yeah.
I said you have summarized it much better than
Sorry,
I.
ma'am.
You have summarized it in much better language than I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you once and welcome. And here I conclude our day 3 of this international webinar of 7 days on the theme of Pedagogy of Teaching History, which is being organized by Kaash Foundation's Center for Academic and Professional Development, CAPD, in collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai. As a part of organizing team, as a part of Kaash Foundation, I'm very thankful to both the speakers for giving their time and right understanding about the learning and teaching of history in current scenario. Over to you, Megha.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for wonderfully moderating the entire session. With this, we come to the end of the third day of International Faculty Development Program. Like today, we will be having a closed group meet for fourth day. The link will be sent to your respective WhatsApp groups. The session for tomorrow will proceed with two stalwarts, Dr. Omji Upadhyay and Professor Dr. Vasant Shinde. While Dr. Omji Upadhyay will be deliberating his presentation on reflection of anomalies and discrepancies in teaching history, and Professor Dr. Vasant Shinde on title Multidisciplinary Approaches to Restrict Authentic History. The feedback form will be sent on your respective WhatsApp groups. Myself, Megha Patel, a team member of Kaash Foundation, signing off.